Here's a few updates on my 600 since it's all apart now. Well, not all apart. We had a clutch slip going on for a few years now, and it was due to pilot shaft bushing, or I mean seal assembly that wasn't doing its job. Here's the pilot shaft where the oil was leaking from here where the seal rides to down here, and it was dribbling to the splines here and then dripping down onto the clutch disc, and then as the clutch disc rotated it would just splatter it all over the friction surface and go from there. See another video where there's some modifications or upgrades you can do to an 850 pilot shaft bushing assembly that you can use. It will prevent that if you overfill your transmission like I do. I don't know if I'd recommend it. I'll probably still continue to overfill them just a little bit, but maybe not that much, so it probably reaches the level right below where the pilot shaft seal rides. So I won't try to prevent leaks, but you know, a lot of seals are in oil, so I don't know how you're gonna prevent all the leaks. Another thing I'm working on now is, for the past few years I've been working on this, replacing the boots with a higher grade neoprene rubber instead of, you know, the 600 stock rubber, which here you can see it's got a little crack in it right there, and I think that's causing a lot of this weeping. I'm not going to replace it right now, but these get soft. I guess they crack too, so I'm just kind of fed up with replacing them. I think I probably could use new ones every 5 years. I'm not a chemist or whatever. I don't know if it's probably caused by the oil eating away at the rubber, I guess. I'm not too impressed with these neoprene ones either. See how these are, if this shows up or not, but see how they're starting to crack? I just discovered that. These have been on here for about 5 years. I'm using a stock 850 spring here and then something temporary because I didn't have a zip tie that small, or a strong enough one. These are boots from a Geo Metro inner CV boot, right or left side, I forget, and I cut the inside mounting surface and I mounted it right on one of the boot, whatever they call these, bellows, and it seals up, as you can see, really nice. I mean, there is no leaks. It's cracking, but it's probably better than a stock one. They're obviously a lot cheaper probably, and you can get them locally. But since then, I've found the right dimensions for, not really cutting all this stuff, and maybe a tighter fit on the axle, because this doesn't fit super tight, so you're going to definitely need something like this, and you won't have to do any cutting. And that's on the four-wheel off-road, what do they call those, ATVs. It's a Honda. I don't remember the model, but you can look. I guess I can look them up if somebody needs them. But it'll just fit right on here, real perfect and real tight. And I have some of those. I just haven't put them on yet. As you can see, one side's got Geo Metro and the other's a stock Fiat 600. Battery cable up there is from a 124, so it gives it a little bit more amperage back here for that little starter. Boots here also dissolve. I haven't got a replacement for those yet, but I'm looking for something a little better, better rubber, because they start to disintegrate after 4 or 5 years, just sitting around actually. What else? 850 sway bar, mounted it I tried to model it after an 850 where they mounted it onto the rear trailing arm here. And I probably in an 850 they're mounted to the body here, but since it's not ideal, I kind of mounted it using some square box tubing and angling them out as far as I felt I could, do to get this to move out as far as possible. ground cable. So that's done on both sides and mounted on this side of the trailing arm. Oil filter I mounted under here underneath the back seat, which works out really well if you don't care, if you want to clean up your engine bay. That's the reason I did it. They go through this hole here that I made, which is covered with some tubing to prevent any cutting of the tube, and then they run from the side of the block here to underneath the car. I did have it mounted here at one time, and you can see these 3 holes here, I think. Same apparatus, and I think I mounted the hoses somewhere, and I decided to move it underneath for a cleaner engine bay appearance. This is an X19 stainless reservoir pan radiator coolant reservoir, which I installed. Piping to the front radiator is done in as sano way as I've ever done. I've been doing this lately to people's cars that wanted this done, is do it. Run one pipe on the side and run one other pipe inside this old heater duct, and then have it come out underneath here. And that kind of cleans up the area here, and mounted it real close to the floorboard and gave it a real sano appearance. The angle iron bracket here to sturdy up the clutch cable housing. Instead of the flimsy stock 600 stuff. That's proof here. That's the early box with a fine spline input shaft. Transmission mounts. They're the stock rubber ones, but what I did is I had a sample from an Al Cosentino where he had a bracket that he let me borrow, and I kind of copied it, and it's a U-channel steel that I formed, identical to what Abarth used to apparently firm up the back and forth movement of this transmission. I guess maybe it holds up the, makes the mounts hold up better. But actually this is a better design overall than the 850, where the 850 mounts are always cracking, and these never really crack. They just, pulverize these rubber mounts, which I don't see any issues here. I guess those brackets have really helped save the rubber. There's just not that much movement on them. The other modification I did is using these brackets. I took the brackets off to get the car easier to align, so I could have more movement here and make it easier to slide. I put some plastic between here to see if I can get them to slide around easily. Also, I went to socket head bolts so I can get a better feel for what I'm doing. Make them easier to keep the socket on there easier. All the bushings on this car, here's a terrible looking one after 50, 60 years of being on there. I've got to take these out one day and replace them with some hard Dahlgren or something like that. That's about all I can recall for now, until I have some other deal with. Well, here's my next thing, is I've got to rebuild that caliper, which they need to. I got four-wheel disc brakes on this car, which are always erupting some leak just from sitting around too much. So that needs rebuilt. Shocks on this car, and the rear springs are. Well, let me start with the shocks. I think they're from a front end of a 50s Cadillac. I forget. They're real short and they're real stiff. The springs on this car are probably cut in half. They're from a 124, and you can see how thin the wire is, so it gives me better spring action, I would say, than the stock cutting a 600 spring, which the coil itself is actually twice as big as this, so it makes it really super stiff and you don't have any action. I'm really happy with the way this turned out. It actually, the suspension, travel, and the feel of the car is pretty good, given, you know, the cost of doing all this. So I guess that about covers it. If I think of anything else, we'll probably make another video.